General Amanda Pierce stood by the large window of the Earth Defense Station Sentinel, and she watched the stars shine in the endless black space around her. She had spent 30 years in military service, and she had fought in wars that most people wanted to forget. The first contact wars had been brutal, and humanity had nearly lost everything. But they survived, and they learned how to fight against alien species who thought humans were weak. Amanda had led soldiers through impossible battles, and she had made decisions that cost lives, but saved millions more. Her hair was gray now, and her face showed the lines of stress and sleepless nights, but her eyes were still sharp and her mind was sharper. She wore her uniform with pride, and the medals on her chest told stories of sacrifice and victory. The communication console made a sound, and Lieutenant Jake Morrison walked toward her with a tablet in his hands. Jake was young and capable, and he had served under Amanda for 3 years now. His face looked worried, and that made Amanda pay attention because Jake did not worry easily. "General, we received a message from the Crithian Empire, and it is addressed to you personally," Jake said, and he handed her the tablet. Amanda took the device, and she started reading. The message was written in standard galactic common language, and the translation was clear. King Vorthax the Eternal, ruler of the Crithian Empire and conqueror of 300 worlds, had sent what could only be called an insult, wrapped in diplomatic words. The message demanded that humanity surrender 5 outer colonies, including New Harmony and Providence Station. It demanded that Earth pay tribute of rare minerals worth billions of credits every year. It demanded that humanity accept Crithian oversight of all military operations and foreign policy decisions. The message ended with a personal threat directed at Amanda herself. King Vorthax wrote that General Pierce had a reputation for being stubborn and defiant, but that stubbornness would only bring suffering to her people. He wrote that she had 7 days to accept these terms or face the consequences of defying a power that had crushed civilizations far older than humanity. Amanda read the message twice, and her jaw tightened with each word. She had dealt with threats before, but this was different. This was not a warning or a negotiation. This was a test to see if humanity would bend or break under pressure. King Vorthax was trying to establish dominance, and he chose Amanda as his target because she was visible and respected. If she backed down, then humanity would look weak and other powers would circle like predators, sensing wounded prey. He thinks, "We are easy prey," Amanda said quietly, and she handed the tablet back to Jake. "Send a response and tell King Vorthax that humanity does not kneel to anyone, and General Amanda Pierce certainly does not respond well to threats and extortion." Jake hesitated, and he looked at the tablet, then back at Amanda. "General, the diplomatic corps sent a recommendation, and they suggest we consider opening negotiations and perhaps offering some concessions to avoid conflict." Amanda turned to face Jake fully, and her expression was calm, but her voice was firm. "I know what they suggest, Lieutenant, and I understand their concerns, but diplomacy only works when both sides respect each other, and King Vorthax does not respect us, and he will not respect us until we show him that threatening humanity has consequences, so send the message, exactly as I said." Jake nodded, and he left to carry out her orders. Amanda turned back to the window, and she thought about what would come next. She had studied the Crithian Empire extensively, and she knew their history and their tactics. They were conquerors who valued strength above everything else, and they had built their empire by crushing anyone who showed weakness. King Vorthax himself had ruled for 40 years, and he had never backed down from a challenge, and he had never lost a war. But Amanda also knew something that the king might not understand. Humanity had survived ice ages and plagues and world wars that killed millions. Humans had fought each other for thousands of years, and they had learned lessons written in blood and fire. Every human child grew up learning about wars where entire nations were destroyed and cities were burned to ash. Earth's history was a catalog of violence and survival and adaptation. Amanda had studied ancient battles and modern warfare, and she understood something fundamental about humans. They did not give up, and they did not stay down, and when you pushed them hard enough, they pushed back twice as hard. 48 hours passed, and Amanda received her answer, but it did not come through official diplomatic channels. It came in the form of 6 ships dropping out of hyperspace near Mars. The defense sensors picked them up immediately, and alarms sounded throughout the station. Amanda was in the command center within minutes, and she watched the displays showing the 6 ships burning hard toward Earth. The ships ignored all hailing frequencies, and they moved with purpose and precision. Identify those ships, Amanda ordered, and her voice was steady despite the tension in the room. The sensor officer worked quickly and pulled up data from the computer. General, they match the profile of Crithian Shade-class vessels, and those are assassin ships designed for eliminating high-value targets. Amanda felt something cold settle in her stomach, but she did not let it show on her face. She had expected retaliation, but she had not expected it this soon or this directly. King Vorthax was sending a clear message, and that message was written in the choice of ships he sent. Shade-class vessels were legendary in the galactic community, and no target had ever survived a Shade Squadron deployment according to intelligence reports. They were fast and stealthy, and crewed by the most lethal warriors in Crithian service. They were expensive to build and difficult to replace, and the fact that King Vorthax sent 6 of them meant he wanted Amanda dead, and he wanted it done quickly. Sound battle stations and notify all defense platforms and launch interceptors, Amanda ordered, and then she did something that surprised everyone in the command center because she smiled. And it was not a nervous smile or a fake smile, but a cold smile that showed teeth. It looks like the king did not appreciate my tone, and he wants to teach me a lesson, so let us see if his reputation holds up against humans who do not like being threatened and who certainly do not like being hunted. The crew moved quickly to carry out her orders, and ships launched from Earth and Mars, and the orbital defense platforms powered up their weapons. Amanda watched it all, and she felt the familiar calm that came before battle. She had been in combat dozens of times, and she knew fear and she knew doubt, but she also knew how to set those feelings aside and focus on what needed to be done. King Vorthax had made a mistake, and that mistake was assuming that Amanda would be afraid and that fear would make her weak. He did not understand that humans like Amanda had learned long ago that fear was just another tool, and you could use it to sharpen your focus and strengthen your resolve. Let them come, Amanda said quietly, and she watched the 6 ships growing closer on the display. Let them come and let us show the galaxy what happens when you try to kill a human, General. The 6 Crithian ships approached Earth like hunting wolves, and they moved with a confidence that came from hundreds of successful missions. Inside each vessel were 5 elite warriors trained since childhood in the art of killing, and they had never failed a mission in their entire service. The lead ship commander was named Thraz, and he had killed 17 high-value targets across the galaxy, and he expected General Amanda Pierce to be number 18. The mission briefing had been clear, and the target would be at the Geneva Military Summit, where Earth's defense leadership was gathering to discuss expansion plans. The Crithians had intercepted communications and tracked supply movements, and everything pointed to Amanda being there in person because she never missed important strategic meetings. The ships used a manufactured solar storm as cover, and they descended through Earth's atmosphere in 3 different locations. 2 ships landed in Europe near Geneva, and 2 more touched down in North America, and the final 2 set down in Asia. The plan was simple and multiple. Teams would converge on the summit, location from different directions, and overwhelm any security, and complete the assassination before Earth's military could respond effectively. Thraz led his team through the Swiss countryside under cover of darkness, and their adaptive camouflage made them nearly invisible to human sensors. They moved silently through forests and across fields, and they avoided roads and settlements. Crithian assassins were taught to blend with any environment and leave no trace of their passage. What Thraz did not know was that General Amanda Pierce had anticipated exactly this kind of attack. She had spent 2 days after sending her defiant message preparing for retaliation, and she knew the Crithians well enough to predict their tactics. Instead of actually attending the Geneva Military Summit, she had remained in a hardened command bunker, buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains in North America. The summit was still happening, but Amanda was not there, and in her place were carefully positioned decoys and a security team that had turned the entire venue into a trap. Commander Kyle Stevens led the security detail, and he was a veteran of the First Contact Wars just like Amanda. He had handpicked every soldier in his team, and they had spent 48 hours rigging the Sui Emmett building with sensors and hidden weapons and concealed fighting positions. Kyle stood in a dark observation room, watching multiple screens that showed every angle of the building and the surrounding area. His earpiece crackled with reports from his scattered teams. Thermal signatures detected approaching from the north, reported Sergeant Lisa Chang, who was positioned in a church bell tower half a mile away with a high-powered rifle. Count 6 targets moving in tactical formation, and they match Crithian body profiles. Copy that, Kyle replied, and he switched to the command channel. General, they have taken the bait and first team is approaching from the north. In her bunker, Amanda watched the same feeds that Kyle was seeing, and she nodded with satisfaction. Good, and let them get inside and make sure they see the decoys and think everything is going according to their plan. The Crithian teams converged on the summit building from 3 directions, and they moved with practiced precision. Thraz's team reached the north entrance, and he signaled his warriors to prepare for breach. They used a device that disabled the door locks without triggering alarms, and they slipped inside the building like shadows. The interior was lit but quiet, and Thraz could see through his helmet display that there were heat signatures moving on the upper floors. His intelligence showed that General Pierce's command suite was on the 3rd floor, and that was where they needed to go. The Crithians moved through hallways and up stairways, and they encountered minimal security. A few human guards were stationed at checkpoints, but they were easy to avoid or eliminate silently. Thraz felt confident because everything was proceeding as planned, and within minutes they would have a clear shot at their target. His team reached the 3rd floor and spread out to cover all exits from the command suite. Through the walls he could see a heat signature that matched human proportions sitting at a desk and reviewing documents. That had to be Pierce. All teams report ready, came the voices in Thraz's helmet from the other Crithian squads. We have the building surrounded and target is isolated. Execute on my mark, Thraz replied, and he prepared to breach the command suite door. 3, 2, 1, mark. The moment Thraz gave the signal, something unexpected happened, and the building's lights died instantly. Emergency systems that should have activated failed, and the entire structure went completely dark. Thraz's night vision automatically engaged, but then he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The heat signatures that had been visible moments before were gone, and not just the target but all of them. The building appeared empty on thermal imaging. Trap, Thraz hissed into his communicator, but it was already too late. Human soldiers wearing thermal imaging gear emerged from concealed positions throughout the building, and they had been waiting in specially insulated rooms that masked their heat signatures. Kyle had studied Crithian tactics extensively, and he knew they relied heavily on thermal and motion sensors, so he had designed the trap to neutralize those advantages. The darkness that seemed like a malfunction was actually deliberate, and humans had better low-light equipment than the Crithians expected. Gunfire erupted through the building, and the Crithians found themselves fighting an enemy they could barely see. The humans knew every corner and every angle because this was their building and their planet. Thraz's team tried to fall back, but they were caught in a crossfire. 2 of his warriors went down in the first 10 seconds, and the others tried to return fire, but their weapons were designed for silent assassination, not sustained combat. Kyle's team used flash grenades and concussion charges, and they drove the Crithians toward predetermined kill zones. Second-floor teams converge on the main auditorium, Kyle ordered, and he moved through the building with practiced efficiency. They are trying to regroup there. The main auditorium became the final battlefield, and the remaining Crithian warriors from all 3 teams had been forced into the large open space. There were 15 Crithians left out of the original 30, and they formed a defensive circle and prepared for a last stand. Thraz knew the mission had failed, but he was determined to take as many humans with him as possible. The Crithian warriors were legendary for their skill, and even trapped they were dangerous opponents. The firefight in the auditorium was brutal and close range. 4 human soldiers fell to Crithian weapons before Kyle's team managed to corner the aliens and overwhelm them with superior numbers and firepower. Thraz himself killed 2 humans before a burst of rifle fire cut him down. The last Crithian warrior died fighting, and when the gunfire finally stopped, the auditorium was filled with smoke and the smell of blood. Kyle checked his team and counted their losses. 4 dead and 6 wounded, but they had eliminated all 30 Crithian assassins. He activated his communicator and connected to Amanda's command bunker. General, all targets neutralized, and we have 4 KIA and 6 wounded. Amanda's voice came through calm and steady. Well done, Commander, and secure the bodies and make sure. The recorders in their suits are intact because I want King Vorthax to see everything. Kyle walked among the fallen Crithians, and he felt no satisfaction in the victory, only a grim acknowledgement of necessity. These warriors had come to kill Amanda, and they would have succeeded if she had actually been in the building. But Amanda had outthought them and turned their own tactics against them. "General," Kyle said quietly, "what do you want us to do with the bodies?" Amanda paused before answering, and when she spoke, her voice was cold and hard. "Strip their combat suits and preserve the recordings, and then prepare the bodies for transport. And I will send specific instructions within the hour, because King Vorthax sent me a message with these assassins, and now I am going to send him one back, and I want to make sure he understands it perfectly." Kyle understood what Amanda was planning, and part of him recoiled from it, but another part of him recognized the necessity. King Vorthax had tried to kill Amanda to make a point and show humanity that defiance had consequences. Now Amanda needed to make her own point and show the Crithian king that humans did not scare easily, and that threatening them only made them more dangerous. The message needed to be clear and unmistakable and brutal enough that Vorthax would think twice before testing humanity again. King Vorthax the Eternal sat upon his throne of conquered worlds, and he waited for news from Earth. The throne room was vast and decorated with trophies from 300 subjugated civilizations, and each item represented a species that had learned to kneel before Crithian power. Vorthax was massive even by Crithian standards, and his armored body bore scars from countless battles. He had ruled for 40 years, and in that time he had never lost a war and never backed down from a challenge. His advisors stood nearby waiting for the success signal from the assassination teams, and the mood in the room was confident, because Shade Warriors never failed. The communication console activated, and a courier ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Crithian home system. It transmitted the standard success beacon, and the signal indicated that the mission was complete, and proof of the kill was being delivered. Vorthax summoned his full court to witness the delivery, because he wanted his nobles and generals to see what happened to those who defied the Crithian Empire. Hundreds of Crithians gathered in the throne room, and they talked quietly among themselves about the human general who had been foolish enough to challenge their king. A cargo container was brought into the throne room by the honor guard, and they placed it at the base of the throne steps. The container was standard military issue and sealed with security locks. Vorthax gestured for his guards to open it, because normally such deliveries contained holographic recordings of the target's final moments or some other proof that the assassination had succeeded. The guards broke the seals and opened the container, and what tumbled out onto the polished floor made the entire court fall silent. 6 skulls rolled across the floor, and they were clean and polished to a mirror shine. Each skull bore the distinctive bone structure of Crithian warriors, and on the forehead of each was burned an identification pattern that any Crithian could recognize. These were the skulls of Shade Warriors, and specifically the skulls of the team that had been sent to kill General Amanda Pierce. On each forehead, beneath the identification marks, was another message burned into the bone in Crithian script, and it read simply, "Return to sender." The throne room remained absolutely silent, and Vorthax stared at the skulls with an expression that no one had seen on his face before. Some of the courtiers stepped back instinctively, and others looked at each other with confusion and growing fear. Shade Warriors were the elite of the elite, and the idea that all 30 had been killed was almost incomprehensible. More disturbing was the fact that someone had taken the time to remove their heads and clean the skulls and prepare them for delivery like a message or a warning. One of the guards found a small holographic message chip among the skulls, and he brought it to the throne. Vorthax took the chip and activated it, and a life-sized projection of General Amanda Pierce appeared in the center of the throne room. She stood in what appeared to be a military facility, and behind her were tables covered with equipment and weapons. She wore her uniform, and her expression was calm and cold, and her eyes looked directly at where Vorthax sat. "King Vorthax," Amanda said, and her voice echoed through the silent throne room. "You sent 6 ships and 30 warriors to kill me, and I have returned them to you as you see, and this is the only warning you will receive." She paused and let that statement sink in before continuing. "Humanity has claimed our place in this galaxy through struggle and sacrifice, and we have earned our position through blood and determination, and we will not surrender it to anyone, no matter how many worlds they have conquered. And no matter how powerful they think they are, Amanda took a step closer to the holographic recorder, and her voice remained steady, but there was steel beneath the words. You need to understand something about humans, Your Majesty, and this is something that many species have learned too late throughout our history, and we are survivors. And we have been surviving for hundreds of thousands of years on a world that tried to kill us in every possible way, and we survived. Ice ages that covered half our planet in glaciers miles thick, and we survived. Plagues that killed half our population, and we survived wars where we threw millions of our own people into meat. Grinders of bullets and bombs and fire. She gestured behind her at the equipment on the tables. We have fought each other for so long and with such intensity that we developed weapons capable of destroying our entire world, and we came within minutes of using those weapons and ending our own species, and yet we survived, and we pulled back from that brink, and we learned, and we adapted, and we kept going, because that is what humans do, and we survive, and we adapt, and we overcome. Amanda's expression hardened, and her next words were delivered with absolute conviction. You sent assassins to kill me because you thought I was arrogant, and you thought humanity needed to be taught a lesson about respecting established powers, and you were wrong on both counts. And I am not arrogant, and I am simply aware of what my species is capable of, and as for lessons, the only lesson here is the one I am teaching you right now. She pointed directly at the recorder, and by extension at Vorthax himself. Send assassins again, and I will send back more than skulls, and I will send back ships, and I will send back fleets, and I will bring a war to your doorstep that will make your previous conquests look like minor border disputes and test humanity's resolve further, and I will personally bring a fleet to your throne world, and I will show you what a species that refuses to kneel is truly capable of when pushed into a corner. Amanda stepped back, and her voice dropped slightly, but the intensity remained. This is not a threat, Your Majesty, and this is not a bluff, and this is not some emotional outburst from an angry general. And this is a simple statement of fact, and this is a promise from one military commander to a ruler who has forgotten that some prey bites back, and some prey bites hard enough to kill the predator. The hologram flickered, and Amanda continued. You have built your empire on the principle that strength deserves respect and victory deserve submission, and I am simply applying that same principle back to you, and my warriors defeated your warriors, and humanity has shown strength, and by your own rules that means you owe us respect, and not threats, and not demands, and certainly not assassination attempts. She straightened, and her voice took on a formal tone. I am giving you one chance to walk away from this situation with your honor intact, and withdraw your demands on human territories, and acknowledge our sovereignty, and we can coexist as equals in this galaxy. And if you choose that path, then this incident ends here, and the deaths of your warriors will be considered the price of a lesson learned. Amanda's expression grew colder, and her final words carried weight that everyone in the throne room could feel. But if you choose to escalate, and if you choose to send more warriors or fleets or threats, then understand that humanity will respond with everything we have, and we will fight you in space and on planets and in asteroid fields and in every corner of this sector, and we will make every battle cost you more than you can afford to pay, and we will not stop, and we will not surrender, and we will not break, because humans do not know how to quit. The hologram paused, and Amanda looked directly into the recorder one last time. The choice is yours, King Vorthax, and choose wisely, because the next message I send will not be delivered in a cargo container, and it will be delivered by warships, and the message will be written in the wreckage of your fleets, in the liberation of your conquered worlds, and I promise you that humanity knows how to fight that kind of war, because we have been fighting wars like that against each other for our entire history. The hologram ended, and the throne room remained silent for a long moment. Vorthax stared at the empty space where Amanda's image had been, and he looked at the 6 skulls still lying on the floor at the base of his throne. His advisors waited for him to speak and to order immediate retaliation, and to demand that fleets be mobilized to crush the impudent humans. But Vorthax said nothing, and he simply sat on his throne and thought about what he had just witnessed. For the first time in 40 years of rule, King Vorthax the Eternal felt something he had not experienced since he was young and fought his way to power, and that feeling was doubt, and not doubt about his military strength or his empire's power, but doubt about whether crushing humanity was worth the cost that General Amanda Pierce was promising to extract. King Vorthax did not become the ruler of 300 worlds by backing down from challenges, and the doubt he felt after seeing the skulls lasted only a few hours before it transformed into cold anger. He dismissed his court and summoned only his most trusted military commanders to a private war council. The human general had embarrassed him in front of his entire nobility, and that embarrassment could not stand without response. If he appeared weak, then other conquered species might think rebellion was possible and his empire would fracture from within. Admiral Kreljan entered the war room, and he was the commander of the 5th Conquest Fleet, which consisted of 200 warships that had broken the resistance of a dozen civilizations. Kreljan was a veteran warrior who had served Vorthax for 20 years, and he understood both strategy and the politics of maintaining an empire through force. "The humans have made their position clear," Vorthax said, and he gestured to a holographic display showing human territory. "They wish to be treated as equals and as warriors, and very well, and I will grant them that wish and show them what it means to face the full might of the Krithian Empire." Kreljan studied the display carefully. "Your Majesty, their homeworld is heavily defended and a direct assault would be costly." "I am not interested in their homeworld yet," Vorthax replied. "Take the 5th Fleet and destroy their outer colonies and reduce them to ash and rubble, and leave the humans alive, so they can see what their defiance has cost them, and when they beg for mercy, then we will discuss terms." Kreljan nodded, and he understood the strategy. The outer colonies were valuable, but not essential to human survival, and destroying them would demonstrate Krithian power without risking the fleet in a direct assault on Earth's massive defensive network. "The colonies are lightly defended according to our intelligence, and they focus on mining and agriculture rather than military installations." "Exactly," Vorthax said with satisfaction. "Strike hard and strike fast and make an example that the entire galaxy will see, and let the humans understand that sending back skulls is one thing, but defending their territory against a full fleet is something entirely different." The 5th Conquest Fleet mobilized within 3 days, and 200 warships gathered at the edge of Krithian space before jumping into hyperspace. Their target was New Harmony, which was humanity's largest outer colony with a population of 2 million civilians and significant mining operations. Intelligence reports suggested the colony had minimal military presence, with perhaps 1 defense station and a handful of patrol ships. Admiral Kreljan expected the battle to last less than an hour. What Admiral Kreljan did not know was that General Amanda Pierce had not been idle since sending her message to King Vorthax. She had anticipated that the king would respond with force because proud rulers could not afford to appear weak. The moment she sent those skulls back to the Krithian homeworld, she began repositioning Earth's military assets and preparing the outer colonies for the attack she knew was coming. Captain Ryan Wells commanded the defense station above New Harmony, and he had been in position for only 2 days when the Krithian fleet emerged from hyperspace. Ryan was a veteran of frontier defense, and he had fought pirates and raiders for 15 years. He stood on the bridge of his station watching the sensor displays light up with contact markers, and his crew scrambled to battle stations. "Count 200 warships incoming," his tactical officer reported. "Configuration matches Krithian 5th Fleet profiles. Sound general alarm and activate all defense platforms," Ryan ordered calmly. "Launch all fighters and notify the colony to begin evacuation procedures." His communications officer looked up from her console. "Captain, they are broadcasting surrender demands, and they are giving us 10 minutes to power down our weapons and prepare for occupation." Ryan smiled grimly. "Do not bother responding, and they are not here to accept surrender, and they are here to make an example of us, so let us show them what happens when you underestimate human defenders." The Krithian fleet advanced in standard formation with heavy cruisers leading, and smaller ships providing support. Admiral Kreljan watched from his flagship and expected to see the defense station powered down and the colony transmit surrender codes. Instead, he saw the station's weapons come online and mining platforms throughout the area begin broadcasting military identification codes. "Admiral, the mining platforms are actually disguised weapon stations," his tactical officer reported with alarm. "We are reading missile batteries and railgun emplacements." Kreljan felt a cold realization settle over him. It is a trap, and they were waiting for us. The battle began with a massive volley of missiles launching from platforms that the Crithians had dismissed as civilian infrastructure. Converted freighters dropped their false transponders and revealed themselves as armed commerce raiders with torpedo tubes and electronic warfare suites. The human defense strategy was not to meet the Crithian fleet in open battle, but to use the colony's orbital infrastructure as a weapon and turn the entire area into a death trap. Ryan's defense station fired everything it had, and railgun rounds tore through Crithian shields while missile swarms overwhelmed point defense systems. Human fighters attacked in coordinated groups, and they targeted sensor arrays and communication relays to blind and confuse the larger Crithian ships. When Crithian cruisers tried to return fire, they found themselves caught in crossfire from multiple angles as the disguised platforms concentrated their fire. Admiral Kreljan tried to adapt his formation, but the humans had planned for every possible response. When he ordered his ships to spread out, they flew into minefields that had been carefully positioned. When he tried to concentrate his forces, the human fighters swarmed the densest formations. The battle became a chaotic melee, and the Crithians could not bring their superior numbers to bear effectively. Captain Ryan watched his displays and coordinated the defense with cold precision. Target the command ship and concentrate fire on their flagship. The defense station and 3 nearby platforms turned their weapons on Kreljan's flagship, and the combined firepower punched through shields and armor. Kreljan felt his ship shudder under the impacts, and damage reports flooded in from all sections. His fleet was taking losses faster than he could process, and already 30 ships had been destroyed or disabled. All ships execute withdrawal, Kreljan ordered, and he felt shame burn in his chest. Break off engagement and retreat to hyperspace jump coordinates. The Crithian fleet tried to disengage, but the humans did not let them go easily. As the alien ships turned to flee, human captains made decisions that would be remembered in military academies for generations. 3 frigate captains whose ships were too damaged to continue fighting made a final choice. They pointed their vessels at Crithian cruisers and pushed their engines to maximum and rammed their ships into the enemy at full speed. The first ram caught a Crithian cruiser amidships and broke the alien vessel in half. The second ram destroyed both ships in a massive explosion that damaged 2 nearby Crithian destroyers. The third ram failed to destroy its target but crippled the enemy ship badly enough that follow-up fire finished it off. Admiral Kreljan watched in horror as human ships sacrificed themselves rather than retreat. "What kind of species does this?" he whispered to himself. The Crithian fleet finally broke free and jumped to hyperspace after 6 hours of brutal combat. Admiral Kreljan counted his losses and felt sick. 43 ships destroyed and another 20 damaged badly enough to require months of repairs. New Harmony remained in human hands, and the colony had survived with minimal damage. The humans had lost 7 major ships and dozens of fighters, but they had won a victory that seemed impossible, given the numbers involved. Captain Ryan stood on his damaged station and watched the Crithian fleet retreat. His crew cheered, but Ryan felt no joy, only exhaustion and sadness for the crews who had sacrificed themselves. He opened a communication channel to General Pierce, who had been monitoring the battle from Earth. "General, the enemy fleet has withdrawn and the colony is secure." Amanda's voice came through, tired but satisfied. "Well done, Captain, and well done to your entire crew, and prepare a full battle report. And I want every detail because this battle is going to be studied for years." Ryan nodded, even though Amanda could not see him. "General, 3 ships deliberately rammed enemy vessels and all hands were lost." There was a pause before Amanda responded, and when she spoke, her voice was heavy with emotion. "I know, Captain, and I watched it happen, and their names will be remembered, and their sacrifice means that 2 million civilians on New Harmony get to live, and that is what we fight for." The news of the battle reached Earth within hours and reached the Crithian Empire a day later. King Vorthax received Admiral Kreljan's report and read it 3 times because he could not believe what he was seeing. A fleet of 200 ships had been defeated by a handful of defenders who should have been crushed easily. The humans had turned their colony into a fortress and fought with a desperation and determination that the Crithians had not anticipated. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session 3 days after the battle at New Harmony, and representatives from dozens of species gathered in the great assembly hall that floated in neutral space between star systems. The conflict between humanity and the Crithian Empire had escalated beyond a simple diplomatic dispute, and now threatened to destabilize the entire sector. Trade routes were being disrupted and smaller species were choosing sides, and the possibility of a full-scale war loomed over. Everyone Ambassador Laura Bennett represented Earth at the Council, and she was a skilled diplomat who had spent 20 years building relationships with alien species. Beside her stood General Amanda Pierce in full military uniform, and her presence sent a clear message that humanity was prepared to defend its position with force if necessary. Across the vast chamber, King Vorthax appeared via holographic projection, in his massive form, dominated the space and radiated authority and barely contained anger. The council mediator was an ancient Felian named Historian Kess, and he had served the council for over a century and mediated countless disputes between warring species. His species was known for wisdom and neutrality, and his voice carried weight that even the most powerful rulers respected. Historian Kess activated the assembly and called for order, and the chamber fell silent. "We gathered to address the conflict between the Crithian Empire and humanity," Historian Kess said in his slow, deliberate manner. "Both parties have demonstrated military capability, and both have inflicted casualties upon the other, and the question now is whether this conflict serves any purpose beyond pride and whether continued warfare benefits anyone." King Vorthax spoke first, and his voice boomed through the chamber. "The humans are aggressors, and they refused reasonable demands and murdered my warriors in cold blood, and then they had the audacity to send back their remains as an insult, and when I responded with appropriate military action, they ambushed my fleet with hidden weapons and caused significant losses." Amanda stepped forward, and her voice was calm but firm. "Your Majesty sent 30 assassins to kill me because I refused to surrender sovereign human territory, and refused to pay tribute, and refused to accept Crithian oversight of our military and foreign policy, and in human culture, sending assassins to kill a military commander is called an act of war, and I simply returned your soldiers to you. And as for your reasonable demands, asking a sovereign species to give up colonies and pay tribute and submit to foreign control is not reasonable, and it is conquest dressed up in diplomatic language." Several species in the council chamber murmured agreement, and others remained silent, but everyone was paying close attention. Historian Kess raised a manipulator for silence. "General Pierce, the Crithian Empire has existed for 3 centuries and has established protocols and hierarchies that maintain order in this region, and humanity has been a spacefaring species for less than 50 years, and King Vorthax's concern is that allowing newcomers to defy established powers creates instability." Amanda turned to address the full council, and not just the mediator. "With respect, Historian Kess, those protocols and hierarchies were not established through negotiation, and they were established through conquest, and the Crithian Empire rules 300 worlds because they took those worlds by force, and now they expect humanity to simply accept that same fate because we are newcomers, and I reject that logic completely." She walked toward the center of the chamber where her voice would carry to everyone. Every species in this council was once a newcomer to the galaxy, and every species had to fight for their place and earn their right to exist as sovereign beings, and humanity is no different, and we will not apologize for defending ourselves, and we will not apologize for refusing to kneel. King Vorthax's hologram leaned forward aggressively. "Humanity must learn their place, and you are barely off your homeworld for a generation, and you cannot be allowed to defy established powers without consequences, and the galaxy has an order, and you will learn to respect that order or be crushed by it." Amanda turned to face Vorthax directly, and her eyes were hard as steel. "And what place is that, Your Majesty? And what place do you think humanity should occupy, and subservient and conquered and tribute-paying? And you rule 300 worlds because you fought for them, and you respect strength because strength is what built your empire, and well, humanity has shown you our strength." She gestured sharply. "You sent elite assassins, and we killed all of them, and you sent a fleet of 200 warships, and we defeated them, and we did this while defending our territory and not invading yours, and we did this as the supposedly weak newcomers who do not understand galactic realities. And so tell me, Your Majesty, at what point do we earn the right to be treated as equals instead of prey?" The chamber erupted in conversation, and dozens of species talked among themselves, and Ambassador Bennett watched with satisfaction because Amanda was doing exactly what they had planned. She was forcing the council to confront the fundamental question of whether might made right or whether newer species deserved a chance to establish themselves. Historian Kess called for order again, and it took several minutes for the chamber to quiet. General Pierce raises valid points, and the council must consider whether the current system serves justice or merely serves the powerful. Vorthax's voice cut through the noise. I have built my empire on the principle that strength deserves respect and victory deserves submission, and species that can defend themselves earn consideration, and those that cannot become vassals, and this has been the way of the galaxy for centuries. Amanda seized on his words immediately. Then by your own principles you owe humanity respect, and my warriors defeated your warriors, and we defended our territory against your fleet, and by the very rules you claim to follow, that means we have earned the right to sovereignty, and not through your permission, but through the same crucible of fire that forged every empire in this chamber. She looked around at the assembled species. Humanity has survived ice ages that covered our world in glaciers, and we have survived plagues that killed half our population, and we have survived wars where we killed millions of our own, people with weapons terrible enough to destroy our entire planet, and we came within moments of ending our own species. And yet we survived, and we pulled back from extinction, and we learned, and we adapted, and we reached for the stars. Her voice grew stronger. We did not ask the galaxy's permission to exist, and we will not ask permission to defend ourselves, and we have shown that we can fight, and we can win, and we can make any war cost more than our enemies are willing to pay, and if that is not enough to earn respect in this galaxy, then your rules are worthless, and your order is built on sand. King Vorthax was silent for a long moment, and everyone in the chamber waited to see how he would respond. Finally he spoke, and his voice had lost some of its aggressive edge. You understand warfare, General Pierce, and you understand sacrifice and cost, and you understand that power must be demonstrated, not merely claimed, and your species has proven itself capable of defense, and perhaps I underestimated human resolve. He paused and seemed to consider his next words carefully. Very well, and humanity has earned consideration through blood, and I will withdraw Crethian claims on your territories, and I will acknowledge your sovereignty over your current holdings, and we will coexist as separate powers in this region. Amanda nodded slowly. That is acceptable, Your Majesty. And humanity seeks no conflict with the Crethian Empire, and we simply demand the right to exist as free beings, and we will respect your territory and expect the same respect in return. Vorthax's expression was unreadable. But know this, General, and the galaxy is not a gentle place, and stronger powers than mine exist, and species with weapons and fleets that make our conflict look insignificant, and they will test you eventually, and they will push to see if your words match your capabilities. Amanda met his gaze without flinching. Let them come, Your Majesty. And humanity has faced extinction a dozen times in our history, and we are still here, and we will still be here long after current powers have faded into history, because humans do not know how to quit, and we do not know how to surrender, and we only know how to survive and adapt and overcome. Historian Kess formally declared the conflict resolved, and both parties agreed to peace terms, and the council session ended. As the various representatives departed, Amanda and Laura prepared to return to Earth. Laura looked at Amanda with a mixture of admiration and concern. You gambled everything on that confrontation, and if Vorthax had refused to back down, we would be facing a full-scale war with an empire that has 300 worlds. Amanda shook her head. He was never going to refuse, because he understands warfare better than most, and he knows that conquering humanity would cost him more ships and more warriors and more resources than we are worth, and he can claim he is being magnanimous by granting us sovereignty. But the truth is, he simply does not want to pay the price of crushing us. You played him perfectly. I did not play him, Amanda replied. I simply showed him the truth, and humanity has spent its entire existence fighting for survival, and we have fought nature and disease and each other, and we have learned that the only way forward is through, and King Vorthax understood that because his species climbed the same bloody ladder, and the difference is we climbed ours knowing we could fall at any moment, and we are still climbing. Their ship prepared to jump to hyperspace, and Amanda looked out at the stars through the viewport. The galaxy was vast and dangerous and filled with species who had conquered and killed and built empires on the bones of weaker civilizations. Humanity was new to this arena, but they had brought with them something that no amount of technology or firepower could replace, and that was the absolute refusal to give up. There would be other conflicts and other species who would test humanity's resolve, and some would be stronger than the Crithians, and some would be more ruthless, and all of them would learn the same lesson that King Vorthax had learned. Humanity did not survive by being the strongest or the smartest, or the most advanced, and humanity survived by being too stubborn to die and too determined to quit, and when you pushed them into a corner, they came out fighting with everything they had. Amanda smiled slightly as the ship jumped to hyperspace. Let the galaxy come and let them test humanity's strength, and they would learn what countless enemies throughout human history had learned, and that was simple, and you could defeat humans in battle, and you could destroy their ships, and you could conquer their worlds, but you could never make them stop fighting, and you could never make them surrender, and you could never make them kneel, because humans simply did not know how.